Hey, welcome back to another tutorial. My name is Plague, and today we're going to be talking about how to begin. Like, you have your Loopstation, you have all of the supplies that you need, which if you don't know what supplies you need, you can check out my tutorial on what you need. In any case, how do you begin? Like, what do you do? How do you start? So this is going to be that tutorial about how to do things. So first step is to learn about your device. So for example, watching the tutorial on the things that you need, making sure you have all the stuff. You can look at tutorials, whether it's mine or someone else's, of what each button, hole, and knob does. Learn this machine before you start messing around with stuff, so that way you don't break anything. Odds are you're not going to break anything by just kind of playing around. That's how a lot of people tend to learn. But it's helpful to be able to just kind of have a basic understanding of what all of these pieces do. Once you have a understanding of what this device does and what every button and hole does, you can then start setting up your system settings. If you've watched my all settings tutorial, you already know what every item does in here, but I'm going to show you how to set it up for your device. Odds are you're not going to be using a condenser microphone, so you won't need to have phantom power. But if you're using a condenser mic, you might want to use phantom power there. You can set up your display to be whatever it is that you want. So for me, I like to have the FX, but set up your Loopstation to the main menu and to however you want. The next thing that you can do is set up your loop indicator. I think the default is status, which if you want to have it on status, you can do that. It flashes to your BPM or your tempo. So then you can tell exactly how long so you can stay on cue. I don't find this too helpful because everything is going to be the same exact length no matter how quick something is. But if you put it on loop position, you can then tell how long your thing is. Or you can have your loop position plus status, which is another setting that a lot of loopers have. Nobody has levels. Nobody does. This is more of a visual thing. If you're like DJing or something with this, then totally like have fun with levels. But most of us have it in one of these three. You want to enable your all clear and quick clear. This allows you to just double tap to delete something, as well as being able to hold down the all start stop.
This will allow you to do live stuff very quickly, so you're going to want to enable both of those.
You're going to want your input source on stereo. You can have all of these settings, whatever you want. You want to make sure that is on audio MIDI. And the rest of the stuff you can just leave as default, and you are all set for your system settings. Next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make a track default. So mine is on number 1, so I'm going to go over to my number 1. So I have a default track. Now, what your default track is going to be, you're going to go into memory, tap memory once, and then you're going to right arrow. It'll say initial memory at first, but you're just going to memory over and delete all that. You have a capital button here, so you can change the capital letters of things. You also have an insert here, so you can insert characters in between other things. And you also have a delete button to delete everything. So what you're just going to do is you're going to go over, you're going to delete all of this, and you're going to type in default or my track or whatever you want to name your default track that you're going to be using for most of your stuff. Once you have your default track made, you're going to push right and right again, and it's going to write that name in. So now if you move over, it'll be saved. So now that you have your default track, we can start messing with the other settings for the memory. Because what you're going to be using this default track for is to make anything new. Say you want to make a new track, you're going to push right, and then you're going to just arrow over to a slot that is available, and then you push right, and boom. Now you have your default track. You can change the name of that if you want to whatever song that you're going to be doing. And then from here, you have all of your settings that you've saved already queued up and ready to go. So with that said, what should your default memory be? Your compression is going to be at a -20. Change this to 0. You're going to want your compression to be at 0. You can look at my dynamics tutorial if you want to learn more about what compression means, but set this at 0 for your default. Your reverb is going to be at 0 for your default here, that's fine. Multi-mode, you're going to put your input effects and track effects in multi-mode. This will allow you to have more than one effect on at the same time. The next thing that you want to do is make sure that it's on overdub. Next is your track settings, and you're going to make sure that you have your play mode set to multi, as well as your start mode is in immediate. These should be the default, but just in case, go ahead and change those. And then your measure should be on free measure. I believe the default is auto. You want this on free measure, not auto. This allows you to make tracks as long or as short as you want, and then it'll set your BPM to what you make this your first thing that you record. And then on top of that, all the rest of them are going to be in loop synced with the tracks that you made. You're going to want all of these on free. So once you record something, it will change it to that measure of whatever it is that you record. So here we'll do something for a half a measure. So we're at a half note. In any case, you're going to want all of these on free. Once you have all of those set up, your memory and your track settings all figured out, go ahead and click write and write it again. Last thing I'm going to say on making a default track is you're going to want to optimize your Loopstation for your instrument. My main instrument is beatboxing, so I have a dynamics, an EQ, and a small reverb on my for my instrument. But you're going to want to set yours up for whatever your instrument is, whether it be guitar or piano or synth or whatever your instrument happens to be. You're going to set up your default for that instrument. Another thing that you can do is optimize for your style. This is definitely something later down the road once you figure out your style. And this would be the example of where I have set up for my record action. My style is more record to play. That's just how I like to do things. And when I click play, I want it to just play rather than going into an overdub immediately. Just little tiny optimizations like that. I know that MB14, I believe, has either his tempo sync or his loop sync off, so then he can have freedom to be able to put whatever he wants on track one, like whatever it happens to be. But again, it's completely up to what your instrument is and what your style is. So you're going to want to optimize your default for your style. Next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to learn about music if you have not already. And I don't necessarily mean you have to get your PhD in music in order to understand how to use this. Absolutely not. Some things that would be important to learn are things like terminology and things like just understanding sound, like room acoustics. Just understanding room acoustics will help you really figure out, like, okay, how does sound work? How does sound reverberate? How does sound bounce? How does it play inside the ear? Learn about how music affects people in general. Again, you don't have to get your PhD in psychology or anything, but just understanding core concepts of music will really help you be able to get the most out of this Loopstation. Next is to practice the fundamentals outside of loop. I don't know what your music experience is when you're first starting out with this thing. So wherever your experience level is, you're going to want to make sure that you practice your fundamentals outside of Loopstation. So whether that be your beatboxing fundamentals, your boots and cats, or whether that be your instrument, your guitar, your piano, whatever you are using for this device, make sure you practice those fundamentals. The better your fundamentals sound, the better your loops will come out. Next piece of advice is to copy the tracks that you like. So go find some tutorials on this Loopstation for songs that you have an interest in. There are a lot of tutorials out there for various songs. I am going to have a tutorial soon about how to learn any track on the Loopstation, but in the meantime, you can look at tutorials that have been done by absolutely wonderful people who have put hard work into being able to teach their tracks and their songs or other people's songs, and it is amazing. Brez, for example, I've mentioned him quite a few times before. He was the person who I first started learning from, and even if you're not necessarily performing those songs like out in the real world or for live events, it's still helpful to be able to just kind of sit in your home with your headphones in and just make music on the Loopstation. It's so satisfying to be able to do that. Last piece of advice that I will give you is to, when you first record your very first tracks, save them. Then 6 months, 8 months, a year later, re-record your old stuff and listen to how much you've improved. I'll give you my example. I have a couple of tracks saved. You don't have to save every single one, but maybe just like 1 to 3 tracks. Save them and just listen to how much you've improved over time. So like Piège by Sorrow was one of the first tracks that I tried to learn on the Loopstation that was a little bit more complicated. And oh my God, this is so uncomfortable. That sounds like butt. Like, listen to these drums. What? Like, I don't think there's any EQ on that. Maybe there was. I just... Ugh, gross. And then this? Instead of using the overdub, I just recorded all at once. Like, what? What is that, a clown noise? This is gross. But over time, you will be able to improve yourself and be able to do something that is much, much better. Like, that is way better. That still sounds like a clown noise, but what's also useful is being able to compare your old stuff to your new stuff, because sometimes you'll find that your old stuff was even better than your new stuff. Like, for example, with Criminal. I personally think my old version of Criminal was way better. And so what I did was I took the new version and I took elements that I liked from the new version and combined it with the elements that I liked from the old version to make a new version of Criminal that is better than both of them. Seems like a lot, but honestly, it's just making a default track, setting up your parameters to whatever instrument and style that you're doing it with, save that, learn what the buttons and knobs do, and then start making music. Learn a little bit about music theory as well as terminology. Just have fun. Save some of your older stuff so you can go listen back to it and chuckle at how bad your clown noises used to be and how much better your clown noises are now. But yeah, that's pretty much it.